Our dog has anxiety, just like everyone else in our family, including our cats. So, so trying to make sense of this, Maya was saying to our youngest that maybe God sent us Finn because God knew that this dog needed humans who would understand him and be gentle and patient with him. And Ezra agreed and said, yeah, I wonder when those people will show up. Comedian Steve Martin says that what makes a joke funny, first of all, is not explaining what makes a joke funny. But second, it's playing with expectations. You start with a common assumption, or you establish an expectation, and then with the punchline, you twist or you shatter those expectations. You have a rule, and then you break that rule. For example, the expectation is that our family is a perfect fit for our dog because we are patient and understanding people, which Ezra reinforces by initially agreeing with this premise, yeah. But then he shatters this expectation by implying that we are indeed not those people. So it has to be somebody else. Another example would be maybe coming to church and seeing that the sermon title includes the word joke, which establishes the expectation that this sermon will be funny. But in the end, surprise, it's not actually that funny, which is what makes it funny. Genesis 17, Abraham laughs. In Genesis 18, his wife Sarah laughs. And in Genesis 21, everyone laughs. So, what's the joke? The joke is God saying to Abraham and Sarah that you will have children. The joke is God saying to Abraham and Sarah that you will have children. Maybe I'm not saying it right. The joke is that they will have children. Okay, so obviously this is not funny. So why the laughter? Again, it has to do with the expectations that are being set, which in this case is that they cannot have children. Yes, God promised a family to them, but that was 25 years ago, and nothing has happened. And now it's way too late. So when God again makes this promise of a child, Abraham laughs and he says, will a 100-year-old have a child? Will a 90-year-old Sarah give birth? And Sarah laughs when she says, after my body is worn out and my husband is old? They laugh because this feels like a cruel joke, an impossible promise that can never happen. But then, in Genesis 21, they laugh for a different reason. So starting in verse 1, the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he said. And the Lord did for Sarah as he had said. Sarah conceived and gave birth to a son with Abraham in his old age at the time that he said. Abraham called the name of his son, the one born to him, whom Sarah had borne for him, laughter. Literally, the name Isaac is the Hebrew word for laughter. Verse 6, now Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Everyone will laugh with me. They laugh now because the established expectations of we can't or God hasn't and we're way too old for this all give way to a miraculous twist. They laugh because they never thought this could happen. They laugh because they are happy. They laugh because this promised child is named Laughter. What faith and comedy have in common is that they both call our assumptions and our expectations into question. The prophet in the Bible challenges the assumed power and righteousness of the political leaders, just like the court jesters. Hope is the virtue that calls into question the expectation that nothing will ever change, or that nothing good can come out of something that has gone wrong. A lot of what happens in life is influenced by our assumptions or our expectations. At times, clear expectations can be motivating and challenging in ways that help us to grow and relate to one another in healthy ways. Like, expectations and assumptions aren't necessarily bad. At other times, we can get, at least I can get weighed down by expectations of perfectionism that come from within. Our relationships can be fractured by either unmet expectations that have been broken, or unrealistic expectations that we place on one another. And of course, in society, it's our lazy assumptions that lead to stereotypes and prejudice and all kinds of pain and inequality in the world. This is why we need comedians. This is why, oddly enough, why we need a faith that challenges our assumptions. Because, especially when it comes to faith, when we begin to think that we've finally figured it all out, that's when we need the next joke. That's when we need the next twist in the story to remind us that, in fact, we have not figured it all out. So after the miraculous birth, our expectations change. At least mine do when reading the story. Now we assume that Abraham and Sarah, having gone through this, will never doubt God's promises again. Now their faith will never waver. How could they? Now they can see clearly that God did what God said. The setup for these expectations starts at the very beginning of this chapter, where we are told not once, not twice, but 3 times that God did what God said. God was gracious as he said. He did for Sarah as he had said. She gave birth at a time of which God had spoken. But then, in verse 7, Sarah says, "Who would have ever said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? And yet, here we are." What do you mean? Who would have said this? God said this. We heard it 3 times. God said it over and over and over. This is what I will do. After all of this, how can you not see that God did what God said? They almost immediately missed the point. I think I've told this story before, that one of our kids got in trouble at school when we lived in France because he left an angry 2-word note for a teacher, which included a swear word that he thought they wouldn't understand because it was in English. As it turns out, English swear words are universal. It was not appropriate. So my wife and I were trying to figure out, how do we impress upon him that this is not something you should do? At the same time, the reason he did this was because his teacher had been yelling at this other student, so much so that this kid started to cry. Like, this is elementary school, like little kids. And he thought that this adult was being mean and that they were being inappropriate. So he left this note on a small ripped off piece of paper in class as he left. Okay, so this felt a little bit more complicated because Maya and I, as we were discussing this, talked about how we want our kids to be courageous in standing up for others if they are being mistreated. Like, we want to not discourage his compassion or his sense of justice. So how do we discourage this particular behavior while affirming his compassion and his sense of justice? Well, we decided that we would give him both a reward and a consequence. So we sat him down and said, we're getting you this thing. It was something we had already actually gotten him, but we're getting you this thing because we're proud of you for standing up for your friend. But there is also a significant consequence because you cannot do what you did. That was not okay. And honestly, in this moment, Maya and I thought like we were incredible parents. I mean, what kind of parents can hold this kind of complexity and teach their kids these kinds of complex lessons and values? So he was quiet for a little bit, and presumably he was coming to terms with the brilliance of our parenting. And then he said to us, "I can't believe you're rewarding me for swearing at my teacher." No! How can you come up with that lesson? Like, we said it over and over again. The reward is not for swearing at your teacher. The same with Sarah. How do you not see that God did what God said? But I actually love how Sarah misses the point in this story. I actually love how frequently throughout the Bible our heroes miss the point, because it shatters another expectation, which I think needs to be shattered. This expectation that faith in life is easy. Just remember God's promises and believe. Like, who can't do that? But faith is not easy. Not for our biblical heroes, certainly not for this particular pastor, and I think faith is not easy for a lot of people. And that's okay. Like, it's really okay. Because an easy faith doesn't challenge any assumptions, and an easy faith doesn't help us get through the toughest times of life if any doubt or any lessons not learned are met with guilt or judgment. Just because the Bible goes out of its way to help us see the lessons the characters fail to see doesn't mean that we're going to catch on that quickly in real life. The stories that we get to see on one page take a quarter of a century to play out. So, consider this expectation for today. Just be human. It's really okay. In all of the ways that we are limited, in all the ways that we are beautiful, be human. Unless you can be a unicorn, then be a unicorn. I don't know what that means, but my daughter had a poster in her room that said something like that, and I always thought it was hilarious. So with that, I am now going on vacation.